Welcome to this episode of Against the Mountains of Madness. I'm your host, Jason.
And I'm John C. Wright.
And on this episode, The Land of the Damned. We're going to throw out some random speculations about hell that hopefully you'll find interesting. We'll try not to
And
stray.
hopefully,
We'll try not to stray into
scare
terror.
you.
We'll try not to stray into heresy, and hopefully the Inquisition won't come knocking. So, hell, traditionally the abode of the damned, the place where the lost and the demons are cast into the lake of fire, the lake of burning sulfur, by God after the last judgment.
And it's also described as a place of outer darkness where there is wailing and gnashing of teeth.
And where the worm never dies. The image, Jesus uses the image of the garbage tip of, is it Gehenna at the back of Jerusalem? Where
Gehenna,
where the fires would always burn. The garbage would always just burn around the clock. And
Well, you say garbage. They used to burn corpses there too.
well,
Which kind of a Jewish, that was kind of offensive to Jewish religious sentiment because they were supposed to bury their dead.
but
So yeah, Gehenna, Tophet, Hades, the land of shadows, Nastrond.
altogether,
Sorry.
so I think we'd agree, just as a starting point, there's lots and lots of imagery for hell. Much of that imagery is incompatible, and all of that imagery. But before we say anything, I'd just like to get out of the way. Please keep in mind, based on what I will say, please keep in mind, I would regard hell as the least desirable place to go in the universe. It's the worst place there is. It's either, as the Orthodox believe, heaven for people who are unrepentant, who are forever in the sight of, who are forced unrepentant into the sight of God, or they're cast out from and cut off forever from the source of the true, the good, and the beautiful, in whatever sense you can be cut off completely from God and still exist.
Now, when you say Orthodox, do you mean Orthodox Christian belief, or do you mean the Greek Orthodox, the Russian Orthodox?
Well,
you mean the Orthodox Church, or
the
do you mean
the Orthodox Church, they think hell. My understanding is they regard hell not as a place but as a state. Everybody goes to be with God. It's just it depends on whether you're God's friend or God's enemy, how that goes for you.
The poet Dorothy L. Sayers once speculated that the way hell worked was the light from God shines on all of the souls of the dead, and for the blessed, it's
The
beautiful
vision, yep.
sunlight. It's a beatific vision. For those in purgatory, it's flames that are purifying them, painful but leading to a good end. And for the damned, it's just the fires of hell. But it's the same light that beholds all.
Which I think is
Now,
I think is fair. That's a reasonable. I
That
think that's a
certainly
reasonable
is-
take.
Not only is that an interesting take, and could well be the truth, but it also obviates the problem of why is God throwing even damned people into hell if he's so nice and kind? Well, the answer is there's no other place to go. God is
Well, that's-
omnipotent and omniscient and ever-present. Where do you go to flee from God? If you make your bed in hell, he's there. If you
If
take the
souls
wings of
are-
the morning and
Well-
fly to above the heaven, he's also there. So if you're damned and the sight of God is pain to you, is infinite torment to you, because he's the face of truth. And if you're damned, the truth is the one thing you can't stand, because it condemns you. You know, it makes you unfit in your own eyes. Then it's a fire to you. Then it's a burning pain to you, and you can't escape it. But he didn't do that to you in that explanation of hell.
Yeah,
It's something you did to yourself voluntarily.
we should
You
note.
threw yourself into the pit voluntarily and chained yourself to the bottom of the burning lake with your own hands. Link by link and yard by yard, you made the chain that you bear now, Marley. If
You
you
have.
can understand my reference.
Yes, I would note. We should touch on, because someone will ask the question, the idea of annihilationism, that God destroys the damned and winks them out of existence.
If you that's too optimistic for me.
Well, no,
if you're lucky,
I was going to say.
I used to be an atheist. If you think you can commit infinite crimes on Earth, if you're Stalin, if you're Mao, if you're Hitler, if you're the worst person you can imagine, and then suddenly at the end of it, you die comfortably in bed, surrounded by your sycophants, and it's like a light being turned off. Well, you better hope it's that way. I don't think you're going to be so lucky, Mr. Evil. Thank you very much.
I think Stalin. I think if I recall correctly, Stalin was screaming as he died, being tormented by demons or something.
Yes, because his doctors would not come into the room because they're so afraid of him.
Greetings, world. This is John C. Wright. I and my compatriot, Jason Rennie, take up arms weekly against the mountains of madness that are afflicting and overwhelming the modern age. You are welcome here among like-minded souls, and I hope we have provided a work of insight, hope, or humor, and perhaps an explanation of the insanity that is the modern age. For more content and conversation on these and other fascinating topics of philosophy, science fiction, and current events, please visit our Substack at atmom.substack.com. Tips, bribes, and generous patronage are warmly encouraged. Thank you.
I have it on good authority that Mussolini, after the noose was around his neck and after he was pushed off the scaffold, repented. And certain visionaries have said he actually made it into hell. Belay that. That he actually escaped hell and made it into heaven. That he was forgiven between the moment when he fell off the scaffold and before his neck got broke, okay? He got a chance. I also hope so. I'd be happy to sit down next to him at the Feast of the Lamb, at the bridal Feast of the Lamb in heaven. Why not? I'll forgive him if he'll forgive me.
I would note on annihilationism, I don't think souls are the sorts of things that can be destroyed, because for God to destroy the damned would be to treat them as a means to an end, and I'm not sure. I don't think you can treat souls as means to ends.
I also have philosophical reasons for believing a soul is a simple substance that's not made of parts, and therefore it cannot be disintegrated or taken into bits. It can't be turned into nothing because it's made of an eternal substance. And I don't believe in annihilation for the same reason I don't believe that 2 and 2 can ever stop equaling 4. I don't think 2 runs out and suddenly becomes unable to make 4 when doubled, okay? Likewise, I don't think souls run out. I don't think it's possible for existence to be non-existence. And souls are part of existence. They come from the I am I. They come from the fundamental being that we call God, the necessary being. The thing that has to exist in order for existence to exist. Now, pardon me for being a little philosophical here, but the fundamental thing of existence made us in his image and likeness. Now, in hell, is that image and likeness marred, or is it removed? And what would it mean to have the image of God removed from you entirely? I'm not even sure that's imaginable.
Yeah, I'm not sure it makes
sense. Or does merely all the good, or does all the good in you cease, but the rest of you remains? All your sins remain, all your bad habits remain, all your hatred remains, and that's just you, and you just forget how to pray.
Maybe. Well, I mean, either way, the point is, we're not rejecting annihilationism as a possibility out of some sense of spitefulness or we want to see people damned. It's just we don't think it can work that way.
I don't think it's logically possible.
It doesn't work that way. It would be nice on some level. Perhaps it would be nice if it did, but it doesn't. So we're not not going to indulge wishful thinking here.
Now, I will point out that if we're right about that, that is very bad news for everyone who attempts suicide, because suicide is an attempt not at death, not at leaving this life and going to the next life. It's an attempt at self-annihilation, which is the one wish you cannot be granted. It's the one thing you can't do. All that happens, and I've had this on good authority from certain mystics who claim to have seen the other world, suicides are merely in the situation they're trying to avoid. Whatever it was they were trying to escape, that's what's waiting for them.
There was an interesting Robin Williams movie, What Dreams May Come. And the suicides in that were just trapped forever alone in a hell. And he goes and rescues his wife from it, but it's a close run thing and it doesn't normally happen. And an interesting film. I'm not going to put any theological weight behind it, but it was a fun film. It was an interesting movie.
It's a new age Gnostic blasphemy, but it was on an interesting topic. It just didn't have the correct conclusions.
That's true.
It's like writing a love story with no love in it. It was about the afterlife without God. So it was still a good film. I'm not going to say it was a bad film.
Now,
But I will also
go on.
say one other thing real quick. I heard a woman who claimed to have been like died on the operating table and came back. Now, I don't know what weight to put on these claims. If they already confirm something that I believe for other authoritative reasons, I'll tend to believe it and spread it around. Otherwise, I'm really dubious about such things because we don't know. But this woman at least said that she was shown a vision of hell, and when she prayed, she escaped from it. So I thought, wait a minute, does that mean even if you're in hell, you can ask Christ to forgive you? Because standard mainstream theologians all say no. They say it's forever. It's permanent. There's no coming back from that. But is that even theoretically possible? Because if it is, you should at least try it if you find yourself at the bottom of the burning lake. You got nothing to lose at that point, brother.
Well, the thing is, I don't think I'm treading on any unorthodox ground here. It may not be out of line to say the reason the damned are in... C.S. Lewis said hell's doors were locked from the inside.
Yeah.
But C.S. Lewis's observation was every day you're making a choice. And in the end, God says to you... One of two things are said. At the end, you say to God, thy will be done. Or God says to you, thy will be done. And every day you're turning yourself into either a creature that's moving towards God or a creature that's moving away from God, which is to say, damning themselves.
Yeah, damning themselves, right.
And at the end, it's not so much you're sent to hell for your sins as much as, well, that's what you've turned yourself into, and now you're given what you wanted. And so, the reason you end up in hell and you're never getting out is, well, this is the end you wanted. In the end, you wanted yourself over God, or you wanted something else over God, and you'll finally be left to have what you wanted. I mean, it's horrible, and you've destroyed yourself. But
while I would like to believe that there's still some hope for those in heaven to pray for those in hell, I don't think that's an orthodox belief. I don't think that's a heterodox belief. I don't mean Greek Orthodox. I don't believe that's a mainstream Christian belief. I think the mainstream Christians say the thing is permanent, the decision is made, it's irrevocable. Which is very harsh. I wish that weren't the case. And yet, here's what I keep thinking. I think every time I turn to God, I used to be an atheist. When I turned to God, it was His blessing. There was something He put into me, He sent to me, which made me even capable of imagining doing that. If that part of me, if that light was removed from me, I would lose even the ability to imagine wanting to turn to God, you see. Now, if that's what happens to the damned, then they're not really human anymore.
Well,
there's something that has been created by a human soul that went bad, that went rotten.
Yeah, they're the final rotten. Well, I mean, yeah, there's...
Every movie that has undead in it is a little mental picture of what happens to the damned. They kind of look like people, but what are you really at that point?
Well, it could be the case. It seems extremely plausible that it's not that, like the demons, it's not that you can't repent and turn back to God and get into heaven from hell. It's just you're no longer, like, it's not that you couldn't in theory. It's just you will no longer want to or be capable. Well, yeah, I'd say you're not capable of it, but you're not capable in the sense of you wouldn't want that anymore. You no longer desire such a thing.
Well, here's the thing, and I don't want to sound like a Calvinist, but if the desire to turn to God is a gift from God, if it's a grace God bestows, if you reject that gift and it's not offered again, then there's no way for you even to initiate the desire.
The Calvinists would say you wouldn't God. Be able to resist the gift and you'd never be offered it. Blah blah. Calvinists are crazy.
Talking to Calvinists is sort of talking to time travelers. They kind of seem to think everything's already written. Yeah. But
I don't like Calvinism. I don't like Calvinist doctrines. I think they're awful. But anyway, that's a topic for another time.
As a Catholic, I regard them as heretical. So
of course.
But I do notice that it's an excusable heresy because at least they're trying to take some other aspect of God and elevating it to the highest of good. They're trying to emphasize the majesty of God in his decision-making powers. But in so doing, they're eliminating another part of Christian doctrine.
But it goes awful, yeah.
It's just as venerable. It goes off the rails.
But now...
But let me say one thing real quick.
All right, go on. Say your thought, then I will jump in. Go.
Because I've never been to hell. I had never want to be there. But I have read poets. And the Dante, when he has the most honorable of pagans, Cato of Utica, is the guardian at the gateway of Purgatory, of Mount Purgatory, in his beautiful in his poem Paradise Lost. I hope you can cut this part out again. Cato is the watchman on the shores of Mount Purgatory in the Divine Comedy of Dante. Mm-hmm. And when the visitor from Earth, Dante himself, asks the ghost of Cato, the most noble of pagans, how he feels about his wife, Portia, who is in hell, he says that the souls of the saved can no longer feel pity or sympathy for the damned, and that they don't miss them. They don't feel any regret for them. And I read this when I was in school, and when I was in school I was an atheist, and I thought, that's a kind of a horrible thing if going to the afterworld makes you so you don't care about your loved ones who are burning in the flames. But is it? I put it to you as a question.
No, well, I want to say Peter Kreeft, but it might have been someone else. Said
let's pretend it's Peter Kreeft because he should have said it.
But to allow that natural feeling, how could you be happy in heaven if there are the damned in hell? Is to give hell a veto over the final over heaven, effectively.
Over the happiness of heaven.
Yeah.
Right.
And I don't, but I mean, I think let me offer a few thoughts. The first one about hell is, I think whatever hell is, it's the worst. It'll be the worst place there is. But the reason hell will be the two worst things about hell will be, first, you're there forever, and second, you won't be able to escape the knowledge that you did this to yourself. So, you won't be able to lie to yourself in hell.
Yeah.
Whatever's happened to you. Well, I mean, this will be true of heaven as well.
You won't be able to lie to yourself in heaven, but you won't want to either.
You won't want to. You won't have to. But I mean, you won't be able to lie to yourself. You'll have you'll have to live with you've done this to yourself. This was purely self-inflicted.
Imagine if the whisper of your conscience was turned up to its rightful volume that it should have been back in the Garden of Eden, and that voice is you. So, and there you are, living with yourself forever.
Now, I said something when we were doing the pre-show for this that you liked. Well, you thought was an interesting idea, but shocking. I think it's true, and I'm happy to defend this, but I'd like your input first.
I have to say, in the pre-show, I didn't say I liked it. Well, you asked me if I would object if you brought it up, and I said no, I do not object. Because I'm a philosopher, and I'm willing to entertain even heretical thoughts in a theological discussion of a topic that's so interesting. Because I'm sorry, everyone's interested in hell. Otherwise, they would not put images on album covers and on the back of biker jackets. We're all concerned. Everyone is concerned about hellfire at some point in their lives.
Yes. So I would contend, I think it's reasonable to conclude that hell is God's final mercy to the damned.
So, it's a startling statement. Mercy compared to what? It's the worst possible, because everything you said at the beginning of this podcast about what our images are for hell, chains and fire and darkness and cold and misery, those are all images. Those are all euphemisms. That's the optimistic view of hell. It's actually worse than that. Okay, so you tell me how that can be infinite pain and endless darkness. How is that going to be merciful to anyone?
Okay. Think of the Orthodox take on heaven.
You mean the Greek Orthodox or the mainstream Orthodox?
The Orthodox Church's take on heaven. Heaven is the state. Hell is the state of being in the presence of God, unrepentant.
Right.
So I'm inclined to go with the idea that hell is the place of outer darkness. I think there's some truth to that sort of imagery of being cast out from the presence of God and cut off from God in whatever sense you can be. So assuming that, this is God's final mercy to the damned, that he says to them, you can have what you want and be gone from my presence. It's horrible, but I'll give you what you want in the end, because that's what you want. That's the sort of creature you've turned yourself into. Because the alternative is to be forever in my presence, and this will be worse for you than where I'm sending you. So assuming hell is a place rather than what the Orthodox Church teaches, and you are cast out into it, in that sense, it is ultimately God's final mercy to them. He loves them so much, he'll do this to them. He will grant them this mercy because the alternative is worse.
As C.S. Lewis says, "Thy will be done."
Yes, exactly.
It's
God's final mercy. It's not good, but it's horrible.
It's a mercy in this sense that there's a worse place than hell, which is for the damned to be in the presence of heaven.
Exactly.
Whether that's a place or a state of mind, either way, you know. Now, but if he were being merciful, if he wanted to be merciful to the damned, why doesn't he annihilate them? Why not just usher them into oblivion?
I don't think he can.
Yeah, neither do I.
I don't think God. I think it would be to treat them as a means to an end, and I don't think souls are things that can be treated that way. God would do an evil to do that, and God can't do anything.
What about putting them into a dreamless sleep without annihilating them? Can't the souls of the damned just slumber?
I don't know.
Be put on standby. Neither do I.
I'm guessing it's one of those. I suspect it's one of those things that will make sense when we get there. I'm speculating, and I could be wrong, and I'm happy. Sure. It's fine if I'm wrong, but I mean, it seems like God is love. God is God. It was put well the other day in Bishop Barron's book, Catholicism.
Mm-hmm.
God isn't the highest being. To think of God as like there's all these beings, and there's like a hierarchy, and God is at the top. Totally misunderstands who God is. God is like that's not right. God is the very, I don't want to sound like a pantheist here, but God is the very ground of, God is being itself. God is the very ground of all existence. Like to conceptualize God as the highest being is too small.
If I may, you're using the analogy of God like a tree or a hierarchy or a family tree with the father at the top and then the other things descending from it, right? And then you're saying that Bishop Barron said, no, he's more like the paper on which the tree is written. He's actually the fundamental being
like from which
being itself has existence.
Yes.
When he says "I am who am" to Moses, he's actually describing what he really is. He's the necessary being. He's the that which without,
yes,
that
exactly.
which without which nothing is. Okay.
Exactly.
Which is why, and if he's the necessary being, that's why he has to exist outside of time, because time cannot have being unless being has being first.
No, exactly.
That's why he makes all creation, because creation can't have being unless being has being first. And the shocking thing that the Jews discovered that no other peoples knew is that being is good. God looked on his creation and saw it as absolutely good. There was one thing God said in the early chapters that was not good. It was not good for man to be alone. And there's one thing that we know about hell, which is you're alone. You're cast out. You're in the darkness where there's wailing and gnashing of teeth. There may be other souls in the fire with you, but you're not with God. You're not with love. You're not with truth. You're not with being. You're not with the beautiful. Okay? So it's a condition of absolute horror. One of the things a poet said to me once, or I read in a book, that I thought was both chilling and struck me as being absolutely had to be true is, he says the worst torment in hell is not the various things in Dante, like being boiled in oil or cut in half by demons or burnt or frozen or whatever. It's the miserific vision. You get to look in the face of Satan. You get to see what pure evil actually is like, and pure evil is the pure deprivation of God, of goodness.
Well,
you get to look in the face of nothingness, you know?
Well, what is love? Love is love is, well, I mean, for all the
Being,
aspects of
I
it,
don't
love
know.
is fun. No, but love,
I don't know what it is.
love is fundamentally an other person centered, outward looking thing.
When you
is
love
all
another
about-
person, you place his good above your own good. So love is
No, that's
love
true.
is a
But
desire
love is
to
all
move
about
to the good.
But love is all about
is
the
goodness.
other. Love is to deny yourself for the other. That's the essence of what love is.
Yes.
It's to look on the other and want their good over your own. There's lots of ways to
Yes.
phrase it, but it's fundamentally outward facing.
Right.
And so the miserific vision, the vision of hell, would be the opposite of that. It would be to completely inwardly focused on yourself.
It would be like being curled up, like in the fetal position, and being trapped inside of a spherical mirror, and it's all about you, buddy. It's nothing but you thinking about how you've been wronged forever.
But
Just with the own voice of your own complaints in your ears forever, and you're also on fire. I mean, I'm sorry. There's burning there. Everyone says so. I'm not gonna believe there's no burning.
But I mean, like, that's the thing. Again, this will sound heretical, but it's an analogy. And I mean, how bad does hell have to be the worst? Keeping in mind two facts: you're stuck there forever. You did this to yourself. How bad does hell have to be the worst place in the universe? Consider back to our Twilight Zone episode where we talked about Aquinas, a nice place to visit. That was hell. And the knowledge that you're stuck there and you did this to yourself. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what the pleasures are. They will all, an infinity of perfect Sundays won't make that place any good.
because without God, you don't have even the ability to find pleasure in things anymore. Not even carnal pleasures. You don't have the ability to find joy or happiness.
Yeah.
Without happiness, you can't find happiness. Without life, you can't have life. Without truth, you can't have truth. I mean, did you see the problem? God is the sort that we use a word like God, Lord, and Father to refer to a thing that's basically incomprehensible to we poor human beings, which is the thing that is the fountainhead of life, truth, being, reason, goodness, beauty, love, everything good. Love draws you out of yourself, and like you just said, it directs your full soul toward the other, but it also makes you less selfish, literally.
Well,
and expands you, and it completes you. By denying yourself, you win yourself.
Yeah.
You see? So when that is taken away from you, when that ability is taken away from you, all you can do is collapse it on yourself like a flipping black hole in space, where you're too heavy for yourself, and you just turn into a pinprick of darkness.
But people say crazy things like, well, I mean, this was back to the Great Divorce. Lewis was talking like this. The people were saying, well, if I can, I will give up heaven and I will give up God if I can just have this. But in the end, they lose even that. They can't even keep what they wanted that they were willing to trade it all for. And
because if God is the fundamental being, whatever this is, either it exists or it doesn't exist. If it exists, then God made it exist, therefore it's good. It exists because God wills it. Okay? That's what existence is. Existence is the thoughts of God made into reality because he wills it so. Okay? So, once you're outside those thoughts, once you've rejected him, he didn't reject you. He loves you. He loves you more than you can stand, more than you can bear. Once you've rejected him, then existence itself is taken from you, but that doesn't leave you in oblivion. That leaves you in isolation. That leaves you in darkness. And the only thing you can do is wail and gnash your teeth. I'm sorry, because there's nothing else. It doesn't matter. If you're in hell and they hand you a feast, the food would be no good for you. You wouldn't like it. If the Playboy bunny came up to embrace you, you would regard her as disgusting. You couldn't take any pleasure in any of these things because pleasure itself would be gone from your soul. You see, so now these are all speculations, and they may be heretical, they may be unorthodox.
Well,
but I think hell is worse than we humans can imagine.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
Right now on Earth, even Mussolini could be saved. There was still something in him worth loving and worth saving. But what if Stalin dies screaming, being tormented by demons that are coming for him, gleefully coming for him, and God says to him no, because that's what he said his whole life. His whole life was one big word saying no to God, saying no. I'm going to make heaven on earth by means of the Russian utopia, by means of Marxism. We're going to overcome the church. We're going to overcome God. We're going to make the perfection that you couldn't make here on earth, God. No to you, God. And God says, okay, no to you, Stalin.
Yeah, as you wish.
But I still love you. I'll grant you your wish because I love you. So, man, you're doing it to yourself, and you know you did it to yourself. I can't think of anything worse than that.
Well, that's it, isn't it? I mean, how bad does it have to be?
In life, I can lie to myself and try to escape and benumb my conscience.
I can blame others.
If my conscience was turned up to the proper volume, it wouldn't be a whisper anymore. I'm sorry, it would be.
Well,
you meet
hell. You meet people that are trapped in this sort of hell today, where they blame everybody else for everything that's wrong with their lives.
Yeah.
And it seems a miserable way to exist.
It is. They exist in perfect misery. That's why I think that people who are politically on the left are all ensconced in misery, because basically they're Gnostics. Basically, the leftism is a Christian heresy where they're trying to get some of the goods you get out of Christianity without God. Without they want the candy bar, but they're not willing to pay to put money into the vending machine. They want something for nothing.
And in the end, they'll lose even the candy. But I mean, if you met these people that just blame everybody else for everything, I mean, there's whole industries of it.
I did ask one of them about that once, and he said it was something that it was the fault of society for making him blame everyone for everything. And I said, oh yeah, you're right. So obviously we have to reform society.
But it's so tragic. It's so tragic because no, I know.
Yes.
But it's so tragic. Like it just it's so tragic to look at these people, because you meet these people who, for them, everything else is someone else's fault.
Because they could have had happiness. They could have had joy. They could have had a perfect life. They could have had, got married, done a good job, walked in the sunlight, listened to the birds. They could have done something with themselves. And they made themselves. You see, we humans are little gods. God is a creator, and we're given the ability to create ourselves by our habits, by our actions. You make yourself either into a saint or into a sinner, one step at a time. Okay? And so these people took their power of creation. Now, they can't change the world. That wasn't given to us. But they can change their souls and make them, and they made themselves into Gollum. They made themselves into this wheezing, sniveling, greedy, filthy, lying creature that can only talk about itself in the plural because it lost its sense of self-identity.
My precious.
Right. The only thing it craves is worldly power, not itself.
Well, he craves he craves the ring, and
which eats away at his mind. The ring is like a machine that promises you that you can get your way. You can dominate the wills of other people. You won't be seen. Whatever you do will be kept secret. Do you see how subtle it is as a metaphor? You see, and it gives you dominion allegedly over all the world because your will can now dominate the wills of others.
And look what it does to Gollum. And it finally destroys Gollum at the end.
And he used to be a hobbit. He used to be a nice, chubby, fat, guy with fur on his feet who lived by the river fishing.
Yep.
And by the way, his name's Smeagol. That's the Middle English name for Cain from the Cain and Abel story. Smeagol and Dagel. That's the Cain and Abel story that retold in Middle Earth. Ha ha! Yep, Smeagol and Dagel.
Oh yeah, because
the guy he kills to steal the ring from. So there's murder blood on the ring from the get-go. Okay, it's very Norse and it's very Wagnerian in its flavor and approach, but it's actually Christian in its meaning because Smeagol and Dagel is Cain and Abel.
Ah, there you go. I did not know that. I will enjoy that aspect of the story more now. But
well, you also have to go if you go into the calendar at the end and look at the dates when the Fellowship sets off from Rivendell. It's December 25th. And when when the ring is finally destroyed, that's May Day, Ladies' Day, the 25th, I think, of May. It's our Lady's feast day. So it's the quest is the Christian liturgical calendar year, which is meant to be a reflection and an honor of the path of life, leading from birth to death and resurrection.
And here clowns say that Tolkien wasn't really a Christian or wasn't really a Catholic. Or Tolkien's Catholicism didn't impinge on the story. Like all through it.
He, in one of his letters, says that the thing is Catholic through and through, and it quite clearly is. So, now he dressed it up in kind of a northern Norse garb, if you will. Middle Earth is just the English translation of Midgard.
He's a bit subtler than C.S. Lewis.
Yes, that was kind of a point
than his friend Jack.
that was kind of a point of contention between them, you know.
Yes.
And Jack, I love Lewis like I know his business, but I did notice he threw in classical and Norse and every mismatched type of mythology into his world of Narnia without any rhyme or reason to it. He was not a world builder. Tolkien was a world builder.
Yeah.
You know?
No,
but
true.
I'll point out
that
Lewis was not Catholic, and therefore he did not do what Dante did or Tolkien by organizing and structuring everything in a very orderly divine order. Lewis was much more like Milton, who had a heaven and hell and a Narnia and a kingdom based more on the romance of it rather than the structure of it. So now, don't get me wrong. I'm a big fan of Milton. I love Milton. Even back when I was an atheist, I used to reread Milton all the time. But I reread Dante more. You know. Now, Milton's hell is just on fire. I should say, it's burning. Dante's hell is an Aristotelian tube or funnel that has levels of hell and the degrees of evil that
frozen
you do.
in ice.
Is you're frozen in ice at the bottom unless you're Brutus, Cassius, or Judas. In which case you're actually being gnawed on in the mouth of Satan, who has 3 heads in that version as a mockery of the Trinity that he's opposing. You see? And they say Dante was a perfectly good science fiction writer because when the poet and his guide climb down the leg of Satan, when they get right at the midpoint of the world, they're climbing up again. Because according to the science of the time, everything in the gravity went toward the very midpoint of the earth.
Oh now, yes, that's the that always amuses me about Galileo took us out of the center of the universe. Like hell was the center of the universe in that cosmology.
According to the medieval idea, the center of the universe was the garbage pit of Gehenna.
Yes.
It was the trash can where everything low and heavy fell to. Yes. And the real exciting part, if you believe in the geocentric model, the stars are rotating at an almost infinite speed because, according to them, the stars were almost infinitely far away, which means they go an unimaginable amount of space. So they're speeding like angels. They are angels, in fact. So, I mean, the geocentric model may be wrong, but it's certainly beautiful.
Yes.
So read Dante, and you'll find out much more about it. He actually does a brilliant job. But again, I'm not gonna mock Milton. His Satan is one of the most impressive villains in all of
what was
literature.
he like?
He was a pagan hero. That is to say, a hero without God. So he made all these public speeches about liberty and about a mind will be unstirred. Whether I'm in heaven or hell, I'm still my own master. Okay, better to reign in hell than serve in heaven. Okay, the proudest speeches you're ever going to hear. And some people, and I hate to say it, some poets even take him at face value. And I just think you guys are so stupid. I'm sorry. Satan in the poem, when he comes in sight of Eden and he lands on Mount Nepenthes and he sees Eve in all her beauty, in all her innocence, he has an entire speech of his own wretchedness where he regrets everything he did, but he doesn't repent. He doesn't even ask for, so he is the most miserable of all miserable beings. And his misery is increased by the fact that the other devils look up to him as their leader and admire him. Now, that's a really cool poetical image, and I take no glory from it. But if you read the Screwtape Letters, or you read Dante, where the devil is just the guy stuck at the lowest part of the pit in hell, he's not the prince of hell. He's the inmate. He's not the jailer. He's the guy in solitary. Okay? Now, that's his ultimate fate. At the moment, we who live on the roof of hell, because the surface of the earth is just the top layer, he still has influence on us, and he's trying to beckon us to come down to his level. And that's what all temptation is, and that's what all this rigmarole is this rigmarole we call human life. But it's all the gateway to hell, if you end up in hell. C.S. Lewis, in The Great Divorce, has a passage where he says, if you get into hell, looking back, everything in your life up to that point will always have been hell.
Yeah.
Nothing you currently take pleasure in will please you then in memory.
You'll
But
lose it all.
if you get into heaven, every wound you take now will be a sign of glory in heaven, the same way the cross, the
Everything
nails in
will
the
be
palms,
redeemed.
the stigmata and the wound in the side of Christ is a sign of his glory. He could have come back. When he comes back and visits the disciples after he's dead and risen again, Christ does not erase his wounds.
No.
They're signs
But
of his glory.
yeah.
They're signs of his love. But they
In the
shouldn't
end-
be signs of pain. How do you turn pain into signs of love? What kind of alchemy is that? That's what heaven does. Hell is the condition of turning something pleasant into something hellish. We see a little foretaste of hell by the unhappy people you just mentioned who blame everyone but themselves. They gather in groups, they paint their hair blue, they curse America, and they hold up signs demanding the government do things that even God could not do, okay? Make me happy. Change the past. Make it so that no one ever did a bad thing to any other people. Okay, shut up. Okay. All you're doing is you're making your life here on earth, which could be perfectly pleasant if you did not seek pleasure on earth, ironic as that sounds.
Yeah.
Your life could be worth something. Excuse me, I shouldn't even say pleasant. Your life could be devoted to a duty toward God that would make you fulfilled, whether you were happy here or not, because you'll get infinite joy if you don't get it here, or you might get a foretaste here. All the other blessings will probably be added to you.
Well,
No one knows the mind of God.
I
But
think it
at least
was-
you won't be making yourself miserable, okay? If you shoot yourself in the foot, that's on you, buddy, okay? So if you are the kind of person who takes joy and turns it into misery, you make yourself unhappy deliberately, that's what you're going to be like in hell. Now imagine that part of you gaining infinite power over you. That's like what the devil's going to do.
the main part of you, yeah. Well,
That's the miserific vision. You're going to look in the face of the devil. It's
And-
going to look a lot like your face.
and the irony is, I think it was Nietzsche that said, somebody said, I have a feeling it was Nietzsche, all sufferings and injustices are bearable if you have a reason to bear them, but even the mildest injury is completely unbearable if you have no reason to bear it. And the example given was like childbirth for a woman is difficult and painful, but at the end you get a baby.
Her
So it's-
memory of the pain disappears because of the joy that she's brought a man
Yeah,
into the
exactly.
world.
Well,
Yes.
it takes the pain and it transforms it into something else.
Right.
Because
right.
there's a reason for it. And I think like what you were saying about heaven, all of the wounds and injustices and suffering in this world will be transformed because it will be seen in the light of heaven. All of it will be redeemed. All of it will be perfected. So even the worst.
All of it will be without regret. And in hell, there's nothing but regret. That's what all the
And-
wailing is about, and all the
Yeah,
national
in
teeth. It's just
hell,
regret.
all of the good things will be corrupted and lost.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, Christian mystic.
So let me interrupt and just say, you and I have never been to hell, and we really don't know what it's going to be like. We know some things that Christ told us, and a lot of guesswork. But we can see hints of it by looking at the way we live here on earth now
We-
and
we
say,
can have a foretaste of
what makes life hellish or heavenly? Okay, here and now, and you know, love makes it heavenly, and hate makes it hellish, or excuse me, indifference makes it hellish, because hate is not actually the opposite of love. Indifference is the opposite of love.
Yes.
So yeah, selfishness makes it hellish.
hate and love are, in a sense, two sides of the same coin. Because
Yeah, at least you're still
you have to
engaged.
care about the other person to hate them.
Yeah, right.
Not that hate is a good thing, but
No, but it's better than hell.
But it's better than indifference.
It's better than you just being wrapped up in yourself because you're not that great. You know, I'm sorry.
that's-
No offense to you, but
But that's the taste of it, isn't it?
yeah.
The taste of heaven is looking outward and doing things for other people, and just the other person centeredness. And
I'm sure that-
the
I'm
taste
sure
of
somewhere
hell
there's-
is when you do selfish things for yourself at the expense of others. You treat other people as instruments to what you want rather than ends in their own right.
Very Kantian of you to say so. Yes, exactly.
Well, but he wasn't wrong.
No, he was
I mean,
right. He wasn't wrong.
He definitely
not
hit
wrong.
onto something there.
Sure.
You shouldn't treat people, but I mean, It's easy
Because
to
you
say
can't-
you shouldn't treat
because
people as
you-
means.
Can't use another person as a tool if you love that person.
Well, yeah.
See, that's really what he's getting at. But he's completely right. If you're just using a person as a means to an end, you're taking the image and likeness of God. You're taking your brother in Christ, and you're saying, this guy doesn't exist for his own purposes. He exists for my purposes. That's actually worse than a slave. Okay, you're in your mind. You're doing something worse than killing him. You're making him not. You're not making him into a beast, which is what happens when you make a man a slave. You're making him into a robot. You're making him into a tool, which is what Aristotle said about slaves. So he said they were just instruments that were mobile.
But it's more than that. I mean, you're corrupting yourself, and you're doing.
Yes.
You're turning yourself into a being that will need to treat everything else as an instrumentality. In the final
One of the
end.
things that's bad in on life on Earth, one of the things that's bad about slavery is that it turns you into a slaver. And slavers are people who have to become more and more brutal in order to maintain the distance between them and their victims, between the slave. They have to become lazier because they can't be seen to be willing to do slave work, because that would erode the distance between them.
They are enslaved. They're enslaved just as much as their slaves are.
Right. Because they have to get locked into the role, and they have to become more and more, they have to become more and more brutal, even if they're kind-hearted at first, because nothing else maintains the discipline that you need for slavery. Okay.
Because
they can't fraternize.
Yeah,
if you love them, you treat them right.
Well, if you love them, you treat them more. Whatever. Well, I mean, I remember that was the challenge at the time when they freed the slaves. Can you just go and free slaves? It sounds like a nice idea, but it's someone that was born into slavery and raised as a slave. You may not be able to free them in that sense.
I will point out as a faithful Christian that when the slaves were freed in Egypt, they wandered in the desert for 40 years before they were worthy of getting to the promised land. They had to go through a period of purgatory. They had to go through a period of increasing discipline, and they had to be taught the rules. That's why they went to Mount Sinai, to get the rules. Yeah. So it's not easy to overcome the slave mentality, and it's not easy to overcome the slaver mentality.
You can't just free them. You have to teach them to be free. You have to restore to them what you took from them.
Yes, you've got to be their father and mother for at least a generation. As embarrassing, as horrible as that sounds.
Well, I mean that's your penance in a sense.
Yeah.
That's the
now. Imagine that taken to the nth degree. When you use a man as a tool, you in effect have made him a slave in your heart. The same way Christ says that when you hate a man in your heart, you're a murderer. When you lust after a woman in your heart, you're an adulterer. Well, if you're using a man, the image and likeness of God, as a tool for your own ends, that's hell, because you've already in your heart made him into your slave. You see, and you've made yourself into a slaver. So it's hell because it both belittles him and it ruins you. You throw away your honor and your dignity and your humanity in order to become that way, because now the ends justify the means for you. Now it doesn't matter how you get the pleasure; you'll be happy when you have it. You see, it's all magical thinking. Magical thinking is when you mistake the symbol for the reality. You think the money is the labor, so you think if you just steal the money, it will be the same as if you're a productive citizen, because then you'll be able to get goods and services from other people.
Why can't you just print $1 billion for everybody?
Yeah, just print $1 billion and we'll all be happy. Well, no, you moron, because there ain't no such thing as a free lunch, neither in earth, nor in heaven, nor in hell. Okay, the only thing that's free is the love of God, because you don't deserve that. Okay, but otherwise, if you give a gold medal to a guy who earned the bronze, all you're doing is cheating the gold medalist, and you're cheating the bronze medalist too, because now the gold medal's not worth as much. Now everyone knows he's just a bronze medal award winner. He might have a gold medal, but nothing comes from nothing.
When everybody gets a trophy, nobody does.
Correct. So that's also a nice image of hell. Everyone gets a trophy.
Well,
and you're in the outer darkness, amid the wailing and the gnashing of teeth, burning, and you're clutching your trophy of yourself, and you're your own little god.
Isn't it interesting?
Win.
We come back to hell is God's final loving God's final judgment on you, and it is a final judgment, but it's to give you what you. I mean, it is a punishment. It is recompense for your sins. It is what you deserve. Blah, like all I try and say blah blah blah. All of these things.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it's you being given what you've turned yourself into. You're not.
Yeah.
It's not.
It's like he takes the clay and fires it, and then once the clay is fired, you can't shape it anymore. It's set. It's done. You're done.
And
See?
but it's not.
And if you're a good man, the clay is perfected. If you're saved, the clay is perfected.
But
if you're in purgatory, the clay purifies you, and if you're in hell, then you're just set. You're just unworthy. You lost.
But at no point is it. There's nothing cruel or unjust or vicious about hell. It's just.
Let me speak
what
up
else
for
can
my
be done for you?
Let me speak up for my atheist friends,
Sure.
because my atheist friends would say, "What is the point of a punishment if the guy can't learn anything from it? If you locking a person to prison forever, what's the point of that? It's not to protect the people on the outside because the saints in heaven are beyond any harm. The whipping, the spanking doesn't do it. It doesn't.
But it's
he
not.
He can't learn his lesson. So where's the justice of it? And if I committed a finite sin, how in the world do I deserve infinite punishment? Because we're not talking about like in karma, like in the wheel of reincarnation. I commit a murder in one life and then I get murdered in my next life, and that's. But now it's like I commit a murder in one life and then I get murdered forever. Do you understand my atheist questions?
I understand the atheist, but I think they're looking at it as this sort of. They see hell as an eternal penal colony. They see hell as Australia.
Well, it is hot there in the desert, in the Great Desert.
No,
and you do have a government that is in service to Moloch, so there is that.
Wow, that analogy.
Sorry, I didn't mean to. Wow, that really brought the conversation to.
What have I realized? No, but
penal colony.
But they see it they're seeing it as a penal colony where you are sent because you were naughty, and it's not. It's where you go because there's nothing else to be done with you. If there was anything left in you, I mean, okay. So this is let me
put it to you this way, because I think this is just a nice poetic way of saying it. If God is everywhere and is everything, once you reject Him, where are you left? You go nowhere. Hell is nowhere. That's why it's an outer darkness. That's why it's a burning flame. That's why it's just pain and emptiness. It's the pit. It's the void. Okay? Because once you have left reality behind, there's no place to go but unreality. There's no place to go but nothingness. Okay? So you get eaten by the pit. You get eaten by the emptiness.
Oh, speaking of that, that was the interesting image of from The Great Divorce, where the bus leaves hell, or the outskirts of hell, to the outskirts of heaven, and goes, and then later on he's going, well, yeah, but can't they? Because he's trying to take an apple back to hell so they'll have a trade good or something, and he goes, oh, it won't fit. Like, see this? It may not be this tiny little crack in the earth, but hell is one of these little cracks somewhere. It's a tiny, just compressed, like. Yeah, it's
microscopic.
It's what
we mentioned earlier. It's the guy in the fetal position who's just turned into himself, only thinking about himself. But now we're trying to put in words and images something which is infinitely painful and infinitely hard to understand.
Yeah.
But do you see the problem with my atheist friend's plan? Wouldn't a loving God, if it was one of your kids and he was going to go to hell, and you had the ability to stave it off somehow, your kid. Wouldn't you do it? Wouldn't you do something to save him?
Well, that's what I was going to say. I mean, so I will move slightly into. I freely admit the following opinion as heterodox. Can people be saved after they die if there's anything left in them that could be blown on, like the tiniest ember that can be blown on into a flame and bring them to salvation? I think God will do that.
I do too.
I just
that's why I believe the Mussolini story. Well, and for all I know, now let's be completely. This is not heterodox. This is completely 100% Catholic Orthodox.
Okay.
There is going to be a general resurrection and a judgment. Okay. Mm-hmm. Nobody knows beforehand what that judgment's going to be. We've been told, we've been promised, and I have faith in the promise because I have faith. Mm. But what if the judgment is more benevolent and more merciful than we like? You see. Because
You have a final
Because
chance
our
to
God
throw
is a God of
yourself at
second
the
chances.
mercy of the court, and that's when the end of your
What
life
if you
is.
have a chance? And when my atheist friend says, "Well, what good if your own child was going to go into the furnace, okay? Wouldn't you do something to stop him as he's screaming, 'Daddy, Daddy, don't put me in the furnace'?" I would say yes. I'd go in there myself. I would do anything that needed to be done.
He did.
And then as a Christian, I go, "He did, you moron! That's what that is." But you have to accept it. You can't force someone to fall in love with you. You can't. That's called rape. It's the worst crime of all.
Yeah.
Okay. You can't get married against your will. That's a bride napping or something.
Yeah.
Either you're married or you're
it.
not married. Okay. That's the thing. So how many second chances do you need? Now our God is a God of second chances.
Yeah.
He's willing. Now here's another little trick about hell that people don't know. I am a completely Orthodox Catholic. I do not have any heretical opinions, unlike you. You Australian, you.
I don't.
So
I will freely admit.
I
No, hang on. I will
understand.
freely admit it is a heterodox speculation, and I'm more
speculation.
than happy to say
I
teaching is
believe-
at death you're lost. And if that's the case, that's
I believe
fine.
the Pope.
I mean, so
I
be
believe
it.
the Pope in Rome. I believe the Pope in Rome allows for speculation, but not for Protestant speculation. So we're setting up things. No, I'm kidding. The theological doctrines surrounding hell are actually rather intricate and complex, and I'm not sure I understand them, even though I want to be orthodox about it. But here's something that's completely orthodox. According to the traditions, not in the Bible, Christ went down into hell during the 3 days, and he got Adam, he got the patriarchs, and he got other blessed souls that could not have been blessed beforehand. He blessed them and made them blessed souls, and rescued them from hell. It's called the herring of hell.
Mm-hmm.
All the damn souls who were there suffering saw the light coming, and the demons all said, "Who's smashing down the gates? Who is the King of Glory that's coming? You know, how come I thought we were going to win. I thought we just killed God. How come we're losing now?"
That didn't end well for them, did it?
Now, at what time did that happen? Did that happen at 33 AD, or is that in eternity? If that's in eternity, then somehow, in some mystical way I can't understand, Christ can actually yank a person even out of the mouth of hell. But you have to accept. You have to say, "Yes, my Lord." And
That's it. Yeah.
you've got to be the kind of person who's capable of doing that. Now, can you, as a human being, make yourself into someone who is unable to ask? I don't know, but I think the answer is yes.
It seems the answer is yes.
I think the church says that the answer is yes. That you have
it would be
authority
nice if
from
hell was
God.
empty, but
It would be nice if hell was empty, and maybe on the last judgment something will happen. You know, because that judgment hasn't happened yet. The ghosts who are in heaven or hell now are going to be put back in their bodies for the resurrection. At least that's the way I thought it was supposed to work.
that's my understanding. Yeah.
And we're going to be born again in the flesh. It'll be purified flesh. It'll be glorified, like Christ was after his resurrection. Like his wounds didn't hurt him. He could walk through doors. You know, it's almost like having a superpower. You know, and Adam and Eve were clothed in glory. They didn't need other clothing. You know, they had clothes, but it was clothes made of light. Later on, to make up for their sin, they tried to cover themselves up in clothes of fig leaves.
Yeah.
Which I'm given to understand is about like putting yourself into a wrapping of poison ivy or poison sumac.
Really?
It's not comfortable. I've heard that the palm leaf, that the word being translated, refers to a broad, very scratchy, uncomfortable leaf that grows in the Middle East. I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
That's just something I heard. And it says in the good book that God came down and he sacrificed animals and to clothe them in animal skins, meaning you had to shed blood to make up for the sin. You see? Because you can't get something for nothing. You know, there's no such thing as a free lunch.
So we are
so
running out of time. So final thoughts on hell?
Best to avoid it. If all our speculations are wrong, it's probably worse than we said.
It's not. Yes, it's easily
And
avoidable. It's easily avoidable.
And you can't blame God for not saving people out of hell if you're not willing to be saved yourself.
Yes.
He showed you the way out. He begged you. He sacrificed his own son to show you the way out. So don't complain to me that you can't figure out how to escape the torment to come.
Yeah.
Okay. How are you going to escape the wrath to come? Well,
and we don't want that.
There's only one. We don't. We
love you. No,
as much as you people like to pretend that the Christians are bigots that hate you, we do not.
No.
We really do. We can see what you're doing to yourself, and
We
you're
want
making
you to.
yourself
We want.
into.
We want you to. We want you to repent, turn to God, and become the saint you can become.
Yep.
Become the saint you are made to be.
Because you are shooting yourself in the foot, you are stabbing yourself in the neck. You or yourself are making yourself miserable, and you're inviting misery on you. You're calling into the pit and asking the demons to come get you, and you don't even know what you're doing.
And we don't want that for you.
And
Please
Christ will forgive you
don't do
because
that.
he said, Christ's last prayer before he was killed was, "Forgive them, Lord, they know not what they do." So
I think that's a good place to end. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You can check out our Substack. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and where all good podcasts are distributed. And thanks for joining me, John. We'll talk to you next time.
yes, sir. And stay out of hell.